Look at that. That's a cinnamon swirl loaf. I'm actually sitting here enjoying some of it right now. Got some of it torn off, just enjoying it. If you want to learn how to make this wonderful divine little bread, watch this video and you're going to get all the lowdown on it. Well, here we are, back to do some more baking. Today we're going to be making some cinnamon swirl bread. And if you've ever had this, it's just wonderful. If not, I feel sorry for you. Hey, I have here some dehydrated milk. I'm going to combine this with the water I have back here, and that's going to make some nice hot milk. Now this is hot tap water, and by the time you get yeast in it, you want it to be around 105 degrees. I have right here some cinnamon, and this is a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and I'm going to put that right over my flour. And in this bowl there are 3 cups of flour. I have 1 teaspoon of salt. Let's put that into the flour. Now once I get those in the flour, I want to take a simple whisk and just whisk that together. It's going to give this bread such a wonderful flavor. Now, once I have that prepared, let's take the hot water, let's pour in our milk. There we go. And that was roughly a half a cup of milk, maybe a little more. And I like to use that when I'm baking, that dried milk. It's really nice. It's handy to have on hand. You never have to worry about having fresh milk. And you can make your milk mixture as light or as strong as you wish. So it lends itself perfectly to baking. Now sometimes when you mix it with warm water, and as you see here, you're going to get these little dry lumps that are in the water. Generally this dried milk doesn't like to mix with warm water so easily, but it does mix really well with cold water. Let's take our milk. Let's go right over here to our mixer. We'll pour our milk into the mixture. Right into that mixer bucket. Now here I have some sugar. Let me see if I remember how much sugar I put in that. Yep, it was about 1.5 tablespoons of sugar. Now, what is a half of a tablespoon? That's easy. There are 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon. So if you get a recipe that says 1.5 tablespoons, that would be a tablespoon, a teaspoon and a half added together. Let's put that in the milk, and I want to stir that in real well. And I have yeast here also. This is 2.5 teaspoons of yeast. Now, if you have a recipe that is asking you for a package of yeast or 2 packages of yeast, so you'll know how much is what, in a package of yeast there is 2.5 teaspoons, this exact same amount. So if you have a recipe that says 2 packages of yeast and you have a bulk package of yeast, then you're going to have to measure out a total of 5 teaspoons to equal those 2 packages. So let's put this down in the milk mixture. And give that a bit of a stir. That way it gives that yeast a good start. Now I'm going to give that just a moment for that yeast to start activating. It'll start eating the sugars, and it will get real excited, and that way once I put in my flour, my yeast is already up and going. Now a long time ago they used to call this proofing the yeast, and that was because they didn't always have packages of yeast that had a date on it. Sometimes the chef would be using a yeast that he harvested himself, maybe off of certain vegetables. And he would need to test that yeast to make sure that it was still good or still active. And he would do it this way. And so what he does is simply wait. And this mixture, let me pull this out. This mixture It's slowly going to get foamy. We're going to look at it now. We're going to give it a few minutes and look at it again. Now, in about 2 minutes, let's take a look at our yeast here. You see how it's pushing up some bubbles and it's a bit foamier. Okay? That means we have a good active yeast culture there. So I would say this is ready to go. Let's go ahead and put the flour in it. Some recipes call for you putting in a portion of the flour and then adding the rest later. Sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. Most of the time I just let my mixer take care of its job. Always start it on low. Now if you're doing this by hand, you're looking at about 5 minutes to mix it and about another 15 minutes for kneading. So get ready to do a little bit of arm work. This is going to work you out good. And if you have a mixer, depending on its design, it should take you roughly 5 or 6 minutes to get this kneaded up, usually. Let's go ahead and take a little closer look at this. You'll notice it's starting to form into a mass. In just a little bit here, it will finish up and form into a solid ball. Now sometimes you might have to add an extra tablespoon or two of water to get it to finish pulling together. It just really depends. Sometimes I think it depends on the flour, maybe how carefully you've measured everything. As I look down in my bowl, I see just some little bits that aren't wanting to come in together. It's not much, just a little there. That's fine, and that's quite normal. Don't let that bother you at all. I'm just going to push that all together, form it into a mass, put my bowl back down on there. Let's give it a couple more minutes. As your bread dough is kneading, get yourself some butter and the bowl that you want it to rise in. I have here some butter, and I have the bowl that I want it to rise in. And what I'm going to do is simply rub this butter over the inside of the bowl, and this does not have to be a perfect job either. There. Now, after I have most of that covered, you can simply finish up with your gloved hand, making sure all parts of that are covered. You don't have to get up on the sides of the bowl here, just the bottom of it. There, we have a buttered bowl. I'm putting in about a tablespoon of water. It's going to slide around for just a few minutes. As soon as it stops sliding around and it works in the rest of that water, it'll help that to knead together a little better. Now I'm going to turn that dough over. Allowing it to get wet on the other side. There we go. So this shows you how you can correct it either way, whether it's too dry or too wet. You can always add just a little bit of something and let your mixer take it from there. Of course, if you're kneading this by hand, it would work the same way. You simply drizzle a little water over it, knead that in, drizzle a little more, knead that in, and keep up that process. stop this once more. Let me show you a little trick for helping to work this in. Take that dough and then just start folding it in on itself. Turning it towards the back. Let's get that in there. And you're rolling it towards the back. And see there, pushing it under. Just keep doing that. There we go. Let me put that back down in there. It's sticky now. Now, if you'll notice, the bowl is now looking clean. The dough is looking a little bit more soft. All it took was a tablespoon of water. The dough is also starting to look a little more slick. That's a good sign. Alright, remember how I kneaded that earlier? Just rolling it? We're going to do that again. Just kind of roll it to the back. Alright, and pinch it down once you're finished. Now I want to take this and we're going to put it in our bowl. Drop it right down in there, and I need to put it in a warm place, right over at the stove. Now that we're at our stove, let's go ahead and place the bowl. I'm placing this over a pilot. If you don't have a pilot, you can use a bowl full of warm water, put a pan over that, and set the dough on top of that. You also need to cover this. So you can do that with a moist rag or towel. You can use cellophane over the top of this, or if you want, just take another bowl and simply invert it over the top. Okay? Now we're going to give that about 30 minutes plus to give us a good rise. For our cinnamon swirl loaf, we want, this is a 1/4 cup of sugar and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. We'll put those two together. Take your whisk and combine. There we go. Now you'll be able to spoon this over the dough once you've rolled it out and applied some margarine or butter. Once you have your dough under a cover, you want to go ahead and turn your oven on for the temperature you're going to be cooking at. If you're going to be cooking 2 different loaves, then you might want to consider cooking the first loaf at the lower temperature and then warming the oven up for the second loaf. Otherwise, you might end up burning the outside of the second loaf. Well, there you have it. Now on this white loaf, we're going to want to have about 400 degrees. On this cinnamon loaf, we're going to want to have about 375 degrees. Now let's check on our dough. It looks like our cinnamon swirl bread has more than doubled in bulk. It's good and soft. So what I'm going to do is take this and punch it down, and we're going to roll it out, and then we're going to prepare it for the swirl. Now we have our dough over on our dough board. Let's punch it down. Good. That's nice. I'm going to take that and form it into something of a little rectangle. Just pressing down with my hands. Okay, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Now, what I want to do is to roll this out lengthwise. Now you see how that wants to grab a hold of that roller? There we go. Now we have us a nice dough. It's a little thick on that end. I want to press that out just a little. Once I get my dough rolled out, just as I have it here, go ahead and then take and put some margarine on this. Now the method I'm going to use is I'm just going to put a glove on, and I'm going to take a margarine tub and just scoop some of it out like so, and start rubbing that over this dough. Now you don't need a whole lot of this, okay? You're only trying to get enough on there to form a layer that will hold the cinnamon and sugar together. There we go. All done. That was really easy. Now, if I want, I can put some of that in my hands and put it down just like so. Alright, I have a very simple mixture there. It's all done. Rub the rest of what's on my glove off, which will speckle it slightly inside the loaf. There we are, and no mess afterwards. Now, I want to take this loaf, and starting at the lower edge here, we're just going to roll it. Plain and simple. Now if you would, try to pinch down those ends a little bit. Go. Now I'm going to form my ends by pinching them over just the way I did earlier. And I want to put this in a loaf pan. But before I can put this in a loaf pan, let me get some of that sugar off of there. I need to go ahead and butter up that loaf pan. Now I can do the exact same method that I did before. Get a glove up. Now I have shown other methods in other videos where I rub a stick of butter on the inside of this and then rub over it with my glove to make it smooth. That works also. Take a little bit of the margarine, just rub it on the inside of the pan, and you want to be thorough about it. Get it all over. Get it on the bottom, in the corners especially, and on the edges. This has does a couple of things for your bread. Number one, it provides a more beautiful crust on it, and a firmer crust that is a little thicker, a little crunchier, crispier you might say. There we go. Now again, easy cleanup, just remove that. Let's take that bread and put it in this pan. Now I'm going to rise this all over again. I'm going to sit there and let it rise up until it fills the majority of this pan, and then we're going to bake it. Now the rise times, as you have probably already noticed, on a cinnamon loaf like this, it seems to slow down a little bit. I think the cinnamon inhibits some of the growth of the yeast. So just be patient with it. It will rise up, and when it's done, it's going to make a beautiful bread. Now that we have put this over on our stove, and this is rather warm right now because I've got the oven on and it's been cooking some other bread, and so it's providing plenty of heat for me to rise this. Otherwise, you might want to have a bowl of warm water underneath the pan that this is on top of to warm it, or put it in a warm place like on top of the refrigerator or other locations that you could find that might be nice and warm. There we go. We'll just give that some time. Now, I did change my cover to this other loaf pan, only to give it just a little closer cover so it would stay moist. It has risen up now, and it did take a couple hours for this, and this is not uncommon from what I have noticed about making this cinnamon swirl loaf. So, next it goes into the oven, and we'll bake it up and take a look at it in just a little bit. Remember, bake this 375 degrees. Should take you about 25 to 30 minutes. Well, now at last, it has been about 28 minutes, and our bread we've just pulled out of the oven. This sometimes likes to stick in the pan. What you want to do is to grab that pan with a towel, because it's going to be hot, of course. Yep, and this one's going to stick. Sometimes when they do this, take a knife and gently rub it around the side. Say this is common because of the sugar that we've put in this. Sometimes that sugar will seep out on the ends, sides, and even on the bottom at times, and it likes to hold on to this. Now let's see if that'll release. There we go. It's holding on real good on the bottom. And you can see from the pan how it was baked into the bottom there. So sometimes, like I said, it's a little hard to get that kicked out of it. But it looks good, sounds good, and we should have a wonderful cinnamon swirl loaf, okay? Well, I hope you have as much luck with yours, and good eating. We're going to take a look at this in just a little bit when it cools down. This has cooled for a few minutes, so now let's take a look inside of it here. Alright. There we go. That. Beautiful, beautiful cinnamon swirl loaf. And I tell you what, these little guys, they've got such good flavor. I recommend that you take a slice of this, nice thin slice just like that, apply butter to it, and get it toasted up, and you've got something special. Let me try this here. Oh, sweet. Absolutely divine. I'll tell you what, I'm going to sit here and enjoy this. You guys think about making you some, and let me know how yours turns out, okay? Thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today, the show where you can get great recipes and the best techniques are taught. Please subscribe to Texas Cooking Today, where you will always find something hot and ready to eat.